Okay, so here is the old shitty convertible top on my 1997 BMW Z3. As far as I could tell, it's the original top, so it's amazing it's lasted as long as it has. Had to do some seam sealing on here because I was getting some leakage, and then finally the rear window just started pulling out. The seams popped on it, and it was time to go. So I ordered a new one from Auto Tops Direct, and it came yesterday. So I began the disassembly process, and I got the front bow removed and the little side cable mounting point right here. I loosened that, started taking off some weather stripping, started cutting it back. This piece was completely dry rotted away, so I just started stripping this down. I'm going to clean it better so it's ready to receive adhesive for the new top. Have a couple different abrasive pads and things. I'm going to try to get all this gunky residue off of here so the adhesive sticks properly. It's not super critical that it does because there's going to be some brackets, like a C strip that goes over this and kind of holds it in place. But I just like to make sure I do things right. So what I ran into yesterday was I didn't have a Torx bit, and these brackets on the side need to come off, and they are Torx screws here. It looks like they're different sizes too, so I hope I have the right size. I know these work. I don't know if I need to take these off or not. We'll see as I go. But anyway, I'm going to start removing these brackets so we can remove even more of this top. Eventually we'll get down to doing the back portion here. I have my air compressor hooked up. It's a small air compressor. It's not really designed for use with air tools, but I don't have a lot of screws to do, so I figured I would give this a try and see how it works. But this is my Husky. This is not going to focus, but it's my Husky 3/8 air ratchet. It has a max PSI of 90 pounds on it, so I'm going to turn this on and set it to probably 70 pounds at first to give me a buffer to that max pressure and make sure I don't over pressurize my tool, and then get to removing those side brackets. Alright, so tool's pressed up, 70 pounds, and let's get on this. Alright, so just those 3 Torx, and that little bracket comes right off. I don't think we want to remove the bigger ones, which I'm not sure what size that is, but yeah, we don't want to take those off. So I marked each of these beforehand with some correction fluid with little lines, 2 on one side and 1 on the other, so that when it goes back on, I'll know the exact orientation and alignment of it, to make sure that it goes back on right, because this channel holds the weather stripping in place, and if it's off, you might have some leaks when you put everything back together. So I'm going to make sure that I put it back together the exact same way I took it off, and I'm going to mark this with blue painter's tape and write on it that this was the driver's side front bracket. When I do the other one, I'm going to say driver's side rear, and the same on the other side for passenger side, and each one is marked with this exact same marking scheme with this little correction fluid pen that I have, which is extremely useful for disassembly and reassembly of things like this where alignment is critical. As you can see, I marked it with the blue painter's tape, driver front, and then I put the hardware in another piece of tape, which I then stuck to it so that they stay together, labeled hardware. So this should go back together quite easily. I won't be hunting around for parts in bins, and I make sure the right screws go with the right parts. So everything should go back together quite easily in exactly the reverse order that I took it apart. Okay, so I got the rear brackets and the front brackets are sitting over there. They're all removed. The air tool seems to be working great, actually. It seems to have to run pretty often, but right now it's sitting at 60 pounds, and it seems okay. I'm actually going to dial up the pressure on it just a tad to get it more static at 70. It might go up as high as 80 when the compressor runs, but I think that's okay. It's what we want, higher pressure to get the thing to work. But basically for little stuff like this, a little compressor like that with this air tool is fine. But if you're doing stuff like this all day in a shop, you're a professional, obviously that little compressor is not going to be enough for running air tools all day long. But I really don't intend on using this for much more than 4 little screws or bolts at a time. I think there might be as many as 6 bolts in the back here that I'm going to use it for, but I'll probably do them 3 at a time, let the compressor run, and then do the other 3. So it just makes it a lot easier than using a manual ratchet. You don't have to go back and forth to find clearance. You get it on there, pull the little trigger, and it just goes. So it's a very convenient thing to have for something like this, especially where clearance is at a premium. So now that these channels are out of here, I am going to unscrew these screws here to allow this, there's a plastic piece attached to the canvas here that those screws are going through, and allow this to pull away from the rest of the bracket. I've already removed the C channel from those 2 bows there. You can see this material right here that loops around and gets adhered to, but it is extremely dry rotted. Just peels right off. So that's going to make a mess on the interior of the car. So I'm going to put some plastic drop cloth down in there before I continue peeling the top back, because I just detailed this thing the other day, and I really don't want to get black gunk all throughout the inside of my nice tan leather interior. So that's what I'm going to do next. Okay, I got this piece of plastic installed over the backs of the seats. It's really what I'm worried about. I just don't want to get a lot of gunk down in the seats here. While I'm doing this, I may move it farther back so it doesn't get in the felt rear deck liner there. And the wind is kind of kicking up. I might throw a little painter's tape. Yeah, there it goes. So I might throw a little painter's tape on just to keep it secured in place. But for the time being, now that we've got these channels removed here, we can get at all the screws we couldn't get at before. And the first one we're going to go after is a little bracket here that holds this cable retainer in place. We want to remove those screws, pull this bracket out, and unbend this bracket. The replacement top comes with new brackets, 2 new brackets, 1 for each side. Do not bend the ones in the back. You shouldn't actually have to remove them at all. But I'm going to remove these screws, pull this bracket out, and then that will allow this cable to come out of here, because we need to thread this through a channel on the side of the new top. Alright, now when you remove these side brackets here where the cable tensioner is, it's kind of important to remember, first of all, that the top needs to be slack. It needs to be in a back, at least half back position. Don't have it closed, because that puts this cable under a large amount of tension, and when you unscrew this thing and it lets go, it could hurt you. So pull it halfway back. I pulled it almost as far back as it'll go. Just makes it easier to get at the screws and not have to push back on it too much. There's a plastic bracket over top of the metal bracket, so there's 2 screws holding the metal bracket and 1 holding the plastic. So once you get those 2 out, you could probably slip the bracket out of there without undoing the 3rd. I just figured taking out the 3rd would be easier. You can always slap it back on when we're done. And then See, the bracket is still hanging here. I got to get some needle nose pliers and pry that open so we can get this bracket off of here, so that we can then fish this line through the side of the top, the replacement top. So I'm just going to show you right now this setup with the plastic piece here, and then these screws with the metal bracket. So it's hard to do one-handed while filming, but you know, these things have been in here for almost 20 years, so they're a little tight to get going, but then they're pretty short screws once you get them undone. So have the third one removed, pull this plastic piece off, and there's supposed to be a white plastic grommet in here that you would need to push out with a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver or something, but it doesn't seem to be here on this one, and it wasn't on the other one either. So I don't know if somebody removed this top and replaced it at one point and took those grommets out and didn't put them back in, or if because they're cheap white plastic, like everything else in this car, it dry rotted and crumbled into non-existence, and it's just not there anymore. Anyways, you can see, here's some of that black gunk I was talking about. I think I'm just gonna have to vacuum the car out when I'm done. I don't think the drop cloth is going to work for all of this. But at least we got that removed. Now I can undo these brackets and undo these screws here to get this channel out of here. And hopefully we'll be back to the point where we're removing near the trunk deck.